grab your coffee and get cozy because you are listening to Fika with Vicky, live from home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with our returning guest today, author Irisanya Moon, and me, your host, Vicky Benison. The wonderful thing about having returning authors is that you get to read not only the words they've written, but see and feel the progress in their writing. Irisanya has always written well, as her title Iris from 2021 shows, but there has been a subtle growth of confidence behind her words that leaves me feeling happy and confident in myself. Why? Because it illustrates that they are not only writing, but living what they offer, and it shows. I'm an extremely pragmatic person. If it doesn't work, it doesn't keep my attention. But I guarantee that whatever page I open in either of today's books, Hestia or Iris, I will find something that helps me problem solve or inspire ideas of my own. Working with mythology respectfully and following it into something that is living and that is living and breathing in today. And yes, Irisanya does all that, showing us an emotional, healthy way to move forward for ourselves, our communities, and dare I say the world. And I dare Fika, friends. I dare to say the world. Welcome to Fika, Irisanya.
Thank you. It's so good to be back.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute. I forgot to look it up beforehand, but it's been a minute. Some things
Yeah.
have gone down in the world, I think. So.
Yes, they have, which is why your books are so important today. I mean today. And when I say to people, I mean this exact moment, okay? It's not, oh, we read this book and we're saving up, what did I do? Thank you, Erie Lake, for letting me know. And you open it up and you think this works for me. Like, honest to goodness, people, I am not making this stuff up. I can't say for all of you, but I can say it works for me. It has it's practical. It's well, it's love. I was saying you put love on a page. I can't put it any other way. And you make Lacey Valentine's not seem corny and nostalgic and lovely from a time where people really meant those Valentines that they sent. They weren't just, bought in a big package. So here we go. First of all, not everybody keeps up with Greek mythology. So can you tell us a little bit about who Hestia is?
Sure. So, first of all, if you haven't kept up with Greek mythology, I implore you to do that because there are a lot of really great kids' books that just tell the myths very simply, and it's a lot of fun, and some feel eerily similar to today's events. So, Hestia or Hestia, you could say it either way. She is a goddess, or maybe just the flame, maybe an Olympian, maybe not an Olympian. Depends who you ask, but she is, I would say, the goddess of the hearth, home, and community. She's also that sort of the force that every family looks towards for bringing them together and for also bringing together society as a whole. Hestia was the first person you would sort of just sort of give an offering to at the beginning of a ritual or the beginning of a meal at the end of the day. You always honored her in some way because she was the sort of overarching deity of everyday life.
And as you said, she always came first with the offerings and things, but she wasn't always celebrated with her own temples and as such because she was in our homes.
I think I've talked about this with other books that I've written. Sometimes the deities who are quote unquote, I would say, this is my opinion only, that are kind of the most important or the most influential or who are sort of in everyday life are often the ones that don't get temples because they're in everyday life. They're in everyday routines. They don't need to have a separate temple because they're already in your house. Hestia is the fire, the flame, you're cooking, and the places that you gather around with people. And also she was in all the civic places, all of the political various areas, because that was also important for community and for bringing folks together.
Which is interesting
Mhm.
because at the time, women were not allowed to be a part of these things. And for a very long time after that, women were not allowed to be a part of these things. Now, we kind of brushed on this idea before with virgin goddesses, but it's not so much a keeping down of them, but a freedom.
Mhm.
They don't belong to any man.
Yes, often that is the case with the virgin goddesses, especially in Greek mythology, because we're also looking at a lot of Greek mythology through the modern lens. We're looking at what would make sense for us in these times, but that's not the way they saw it. People who decided to be priestesses of Artemis, or for example, that's probably the strongest one, would sometimes devote themselves to a bit of celibacy for a time, but only to sort of show that they were in this particular journey. Afterwards, not so much. But again, it was more of a choice and more of one might say, I don't want to be distracted by these other Greek gods and dudes. I want to just focus on what's important to me. Hestia, there's a big story about her. Like, please no, I do not want to be wooed by Poseidon, etc. I would like to just do my own thing. Please, for the love of Zeus, let me just stay my own person.
Away from the drama, because there was a lot of drama going
You know,
on Mount Olympus.
one of the things I love the most about Hestia, and it's one story told in one place by Robert Graves, so take that for what it is. But there is a story saying that she was an Olympian and saw all of her brothers and sisters doing all the things that they did. This is Aphrodite and Artemis and Ares and et cetera, et cetera. And she was like, I don't want a part of this. And so she just sort of said, does anybody else want my seat in the Olympians? And Dionysus takes her place. So that is, for me, that rings really true for Hestia. She seems like the low drama, if no drama, of the Olympians. And that would actually make sense. That she's like, I got enough to do. I don't need to deal with this.
Well, once again, a very practical lesson, because anybody who's grown up in a certain family situations understands that just walking away sometimes is the best thing you can do.
Ooh, and often, like, it's such a good model for leadership too. Like, maybe I'm not the person to be at this particular this table, right? Like, maybe I need to step back in order for things to work. And for me, that's the lesson of that. It's not, I mean, it's also the family drama, but it's more that, hey, maybe my talents are better served somewhere else.
Well, and okay, there's a confidence to Hestia
Yes.
that you don't, like a laid back confidence. Like, no, I don't have a temple, but you are giving me the offerings first, right?
Yep. Mhm.
I'm the one that's with you all the time. I have the power. I don't have
Mhm.
to like be presenting it and having all of these shows and things going on for me.
Yes.
So I just see her as a very confident goddess.
Mhm. I think that she's the flame. So she's everywhere. She's at Delphi. She is in home. She's at various temples. To a certain extent, people think that she is more of an idea than maybe a humanoid sort of figure, that she's more of this concept of hearth and home. So she can be anywhere and can be in a whole bunch of different forms. And like you said, like has this, doesn't even need to have like confidence or self-assuredness because she just is.
Like, here I am.
Just is. Like you don't even have to know my name. You can just light the flame because that's something that's important. And every time my flame goes out, you have to send somebody running over to Delphi or wherever to get that flame back. That's how important this is.
So, on that note, I have a quote here from your book that
Mhm.
sort of explains that and moves it even further into the area of idea. I like to think of the hearth as something that expands from not just one place, but from one goal, togetherness. While Hestia is the one who might personify the flame, she is a being who can be everywhere all the time because an idea cannot be contained. It can spread to those who want and need to hear it. It can spread like a very necessary wildfire. First of all, bravo, Irisanya.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear my words read back to me when I've written it so long ago.
Um,
Oh, that sounds great. Good job, me. Good job.
It is good job, you. So, and as Demi Lovato said, what's wrong with being confident, right? So what ideas do you think, as an idea, Hestia symbolizes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Hestia so when I first thought of writing about Hestia, I was talking with a friend and I was sitting on their couch in Australia. And we were sort of talking about community and talking about things that we saw that were, I don't want to say problematic, but hard in community, and thinking about like what brings us together anyways, like even in the midst of all those problems. And I was like thinking about Hestia and this idea that we're all focused on this idea of building something together, and this idea of building something that allows us to know we're not alone. And even in sort of this idea of like the feature idea being community, there's a whole bunch of different ways to define it. It doesn't have to be one thing. But the idea is that we're not alone and we're not meant to do this alone. So Hestia, I think, is the reminder of that no matter where you go, you'll see the flame. No matter where you go, you will see some instance of her lighting a way for either connection or nourishment, for food.
And okay, sometimes people, I think you need to look backwards to see how much some of these goddesses, gods, whatever you care to call them, have already influenced our lives. For example, I added to Fika with Vicky live from home, and one of the symbols I wanted to use was a candle in a window. And that is definitely, as you said, Hestia guiding us back to home. There are all these symbols that represent her that we don't even think about in our daily lives because she's always there.
Yeah, I think that's and also even if you don't have like a fireplace, because I don't, thank goodness, my cats. But, looking at either the stove and oven, looking at the LED candles that I have, because again, I have cats and I've seen old cats light themselves. But looking around and just like that warmth that you feel when you're with community or when you're with people that make you feel like you're at home. And that too is part of Hestia and part of Hestia's magic that I'm hoping that I can bring more and more into this particularly, isolating world.
It is because, as I'm going to point out later, this world is making people afraid. And they don't know how to react to things, and they don't know. And when we feel vulnerable, very vulnerable in some cases physically,
Yes.
we tend to retract because that is the natural thing to do. I'm going to go in my cave and I'm going to block the door and I'm going to grab a stick and just knock anybody out who tries to get to me because I can't because but this is the worst thing for you to do.
Yeah. We're not really designed for that. I think that our bodies are wired for survival. So this is all really understandable to want to isolate or to only be with the people that you know are safe. That makes sense. However, those resources are finite. And so to expand and to also be connected to more folks in community expands those resources and allows everyone to not have to shoulder too big of a burden. Because being in community is tough. Being in this world is tough. And we all have different resources. We all have different ways that we can be helpful. But if we're only, focusing on what's right in front of us, I think we're missing out.
So, which brings us an interesting thing. Reaching out, people need help. Sometimes I feel like we feel that we can only help in a way that people need it. And I'll put a very practical Hearth kind of thing. There was a day when you would just take people packages of food or whatever. You would throw them a few cookies if you had some left in the baking, a casserole, whatever. But now with all the food sensitivities and even wants or dislikes, you've become some people,
Mhm.
myself, you're not
Mm.
sure about doing that with the
Yeah.
food or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's not wrong to ask, right?
No, so here's the thing. I have been at the end of, wanting slash receiving help, and I've also been at the other end of offering that. So from both perspectives, I can say that something is better than nothing. And I would say that like one of the, asking what people might need is great. Sometimes people can't
Tell you.
articulate that. If
Yeah.
you're in grief or you're really, life is just hitting you from all the sides, having somebody say, "But what do you need?" is not great. You're just kind of overwhelmed. And one thing that I have done with my friends and with people who I know have been going through stuff is just as simple as like texting them a heart, because it's just a hey, I am thinking about you, and it opens up a conversation that they could respond. They don't have to. One of the things, like after my mom died or my dad died, people would sort of say, they would sound like a heart or like, "Hey, I'm just thinking about you." No need to respond. But I think that even at like these moments where we need other folks or we want to be seen or we just want to know that we're not alone, just little things like that can do a lot, and eventually will help to resource that person enough to be like, okay, maybe I can ask for something else too now. And it's hard. We're not also taught to ask for stuff and feel okay about it. So, in a lot of respects, I definitely wasn't taught that. Still takes a lot for me to ask for help. So, if there's anything you can extend to somebody without, like I remember once one of my friends, I think their cat died, and like some people just don't no, don't track that as a really hard thing. And I know that. And so I actually just like sent them, I don't know, $5 on Venmo or something, because I know they really like this one tea. And I was like, here, go have a tea. I hope that's how much it is, but I don't know. But, just a little like gesture, I think is plenty. And it doesn't have to be money either. But
No, I love your list on in Hestia. You'll have to forgive me because Hestia and Iris are sort of working in my mind at the same time. So I
they,
have to think.
it's the Greek gods are like that. They're just, they get into these conversations.
They're
And the
all
more you learn about them, the louder they all get. So my confidence comes from a lot more information now. So for
it's
better or for
all
worse.
in packed in that beautiful rainbow dress that you're
Oh,
wearing at the moment.
exactly. That's where I keep it. Yes.
And so it can bridge its way out wherever it needs to. But there is a list that I
Mhm.
copy. But even like sending a card or a letter, okay, this is something we don't think about anymore, and it's just so much more personal than I sometimes do. I jump in, don't I jump in? I don't. When we're on social media, I don't really
Mm.
know this person. Are they going to feel like I'm just eating popcorn and watching their misery? Like there's all these thoughts going through my head. But a card that just
Yeah.
says I love you
Mhm.
is so much more.
Yeah.
And I think anyways, it's
I
not a
do.
bill, it's
It's
not
one
a
of my
bad
love
news.
languages. I
Yeah,
love
it's
them.
just
Mhm.
it's just coming. You go to the post office box and there it is. So that is definitely on my list of things to do. Um, one of the things that made me laugh, and I'm just going to
Mm.
take about me right
Great.
now, if I can find in my own in my own oh Vicky search downloads expression of reaching out to community, because it is so important, and the older you get, the more you know that you can't hide in that cave forever.
No.
It just
Mhm.
it just makes it harder to
Yeah. I
oh
mean,
for
we're
heaven's sake.
wired to be in community, right? Like at our core, humans are wired to be in proximity with each other and to be in groups. And capitalism and all the other shenanigans of the world have decided we all need to be in separate homes and separate rooms and in all with our own lawnmowers and things like that. And that has made, I think, a lot of us really unsure of how to be in bigger groups and how to relate to folks that aren't our family or our close friends. And I agree. I mean, study after study says, we're healthier when we're in community.
Well, it's an unknown when you meet somebody new. Like,
Sure.
for example, sometimes people say, "How long have you known the person you're talking to on Fika?" And in a lot of cases, like you the first time,
Hmm.
it was just, "Hi, I'm going up to a totally unknown entity and having a
Real.
conversation."
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful.
Hmm.
I've never regretted. Okay, so I was sitting there thinking about altars to the community,
Hmm.
Hestia, and I was thinking, what can I do about this? And
Hmm.
then I realized my little free library is made out of little fireplace. It's right there
Oh,
on the
that is
street.
adorable.
And I thought, but it was just the point. Now how do I make it go away? It was just the point
Mm.
that it was like right there in front of me the whole time. And that's what I'm talking about. We do things and we don't even know. And that I put that out there because it's
Mhm.
right in front of a bus stop. We have a lot of
Mhm.
college students on our street.
Mhm.
Little
Mhm.
kids were getting, their moms were trying to keep them in order. And that's sometimes
Yes.
hard when you're
Yeah.
little and you need something new. And I put it out there, and I have gotten so much back from that. So
Mhm.
much, the
Yeah.
echoes from that library back to me have been so great, and some
Mhm.
great books to read too. And it's just
Mhm.
it costs barely anything. You go to thrift things or people donate. It's just
Mhm.
so it's brought, people talking about books and
Mhm.
things in the
Yeah.
community.
And I think even that little hint of a fireplace, I think speaks to something that is kind of innate in humans, is this idea that, you know, whenever we all began, because I'm not a scientist, fire was protective. Fire was what kept you safe. And I think that we automatically can feel like that is a place of safety. I live in California, less so sometimes, but also like to a certain extent, like that is warm. That is, I'm going to be okay.
Yes, the campfire in the middle of
Mhm.
this busy day of boating or whatever, you return to the campfire, you relax.
The
I
warmth in the morning again, you restart the fire. The warmth overnight that keeps the things that you don't want running into you
yeah,
away.
safety from the safety and
Mhm.
all of those things. So Robin, good morning, Robin.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so okay, we discussed the fact that she walked away from
one
the
story says,
yeah, so the story
yeah,
says.
mhm.
I'm believing it because it works for me in my picture of
It
Hestia.
tracks. Yeah, it's on brand for Hestia.
It's like
Yeah.
with everything else. But what was her role in the whole
Mhm.
group?
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think that, yeah. So all the Olympians had like kind of their own little assigned roles. And, I could expound for a while about that, but we're going to try not to. So, what is true is that, a lot of these deities came over from the East and through Turkey and eventually got their way to Greece. And then they sort of all got in story and in myth, sort of assigned different things. So, she was hearth and home. And over time, she wasn't as much. Not only because maybe she stepped down from the Olympians, she also didn't really have any temples. She was also everywhere because the flame is in the home and in civic places. But also, Demeter sort of became more important because of grain, because of farming. So Hestia is there and then just kind of isn't. Not because she's not important, but just because other things became more important at another point.
well, I was thinking this about Iris as well. Their
Hmm.
symbols are so big, are so
Yeah.
universal.
Mhm.
A rainbow and a fireplace. Like it doesn't get any bigger than that, really, because the fireplace becomes sun. You know how it works.
Mhm.
So do they need? Do they need all this extra promotion, advertising, if you will, when they've got the biggest stage going?
I think that what's interesting about, like, I tend to write about deities that don't always have like the biggest following, or at least at least Hestia and Iris for sure. And Iris is a demigoddess. Like she's not an Olympian. She's, she's the handmaiden of Hera and Zeus and does all like the little errands for the gods. And as such, I think it's important to bring those side characters, so to speak, out, because there's a lot of things that couldn't happen unless they were there. And we don't usually focus on like, the assistant to the cool person, right? We focus on the cool person. So we think about Zeus and we think about Hera, but we don't think about how they actually got that message down to the places. We don't think about the fact that in the Demeter and Persephone myth, Iris was also part of it and was also trying to like make Demeter not kill everything. She was like coming from Zeus and kind of going like, hey, knock it off. Or it could have been Hecate, also Hecate. The Greeks are messy. But I think that it's important to highlight these folks, because if we don't, first of all, if we don't highlight Iris, Hermes gets all the attention, which is fine, and he will get it. But we're missing something. We're missing like the idea on some level that you don't have to be the biggest, brightest, shiniest to also have a big part to play.
No, this is what I'm getting out of what you're saying now, and it's very exciting, Irisanya. That society as a whole, I don't want to say whole. When I say whole people or whatever, I'm just generally speaking. I'm not saying each and every one of us, but it's been the celebrities. Yep. It's been how many people do you have on social media? It's been like this big popularity contest and we've forgotten the importance of nurturing, of being the support system, of being all of those things. And once again, this shows how these books are for today. Maybe it's time we start looking away and stop saying, well, this person is saying these things, and just think this person is feeling these things.
Yeah, I think that there's also, you don't think sometimes at the big old like public rituals and things like that about the people who had to bring all the chairs around the place or who decorated. I think that that's just as important. Throwing lightning bolts is cool and all, but also Iris, like she also not only travels with all the messages, she also shows up in a form that makes sense to the person receiving the messages, which I've always loved. And because that to me speaks of like, this is an important thing for you to hear. Not always do people listen, but that's a whole other thing. But Iris also has this really important role that a lot of folks don't know about, this idea that she goes down to the river Styx and, the river by the underworld and the such, uses a pitcher, grabs some water that comes off of the rocks and brings it up to the gods so that they can make sacred vows. And that's important because if you don't keep your vow as a god, you can get sort of kicked off the island, so to speak, for a little bit. So she's also involved in that, which is important.
Getting kicked off the island is making me think. No, but the original...
I haven't seen Love Island, just to be clear. I haven't seen that. I'm thinking
I haven't either, but I'm just assuming there's not a love involved.
That's the impression I'm getting.
But that, when we talk about, this very strong individualism, winning is everything. I show my strength by my lightning bolts. When you think about that in a certain show that originally was about survival, and now it's about playing games to win the game. I mean, most of those people couldn't survive on that island if their life depended on it. And when they can, they get kicked off instead of honored as being contributing because they're going to win.
Yeah, and I think that's like mythology. Gets more clicks is going to be the things that are highlighted more than the folks that are also doing stuff, which is just as important, but maybe not as flashy. Now, understandable, a rainbow is pretty cool, but that's not what she does is more important. That's just the sort of like the representation of her actually
the symbol, her symbol,
right? Yeah, but also very cool. I'm not going to downplay that.
Hey, I give up some of the big promo, the big advertising chances to be a rainbow.
I am a rainbow chasing fool. So people in my life will have seen me run away from them mid-conversation because I think a rainbow is about to pop out of the sky.
And as you point out the book, it is the bridge. It is the bridge from the before and the after. and
Mm.
it's but of course, Irisanya, we got carried away with our conversation, and we didn't actually introduce Iris.
I
So who
started
is?
to. I already did. I started to because I saw that coming. Yeah,
Okay,
demi-goddess highlight.
right. Yeah, you threw
Iris,
that in.
demi-goddess, maybe a minor goddess. Maybe some people think that she might be, when there are references to Hecate, that these two might be mixed up together somehow because they both travel between the worlds. And they're both involved in the story of Demeter and Persephone. So there's a little overlap there. Also, Iris, I just found out, I think last year, that she didn't really have like temples, but she was celebrated at a temple of Hecate, I'm pretty sure, with offerings of cheesecake. Like not the cheesecake
Oh,
we,
can
not the
you keep
cheesecake, but
throwing
a
things?
different kind. It's I was like, how did I not know this? Somebody shared it with me.
I will
There's
think
also
of
a
whatever kind
recipe
of
too.
cheesecake.
There's a recipe too. It's not regular cheesecake, um, but she was, she's a psychopomp, so she travels between the worlds because she can. Not everybody can do that, and she also helps with the sacred promises. And she does pop up in more stories than you think. And once you start looking for her, you do see her throughout Homer's poems, and she plays a kind of a pivotal role in a few places of delivering messages during battle, and again during that whole thing of Demeter and Persephone.
And so you've just mentioned that you've found out more information from her.
Yeah.
When you first started to write this book,
Mhm.
you couldn't find very much about her out there.
Yeah. And it's not because I don't know people who work with her. As soon as I wrote about her, a lot of folks were like, I've been working with her for years. And I think that speaks to the idea that, I don't know, sometimes, like I found Iris because I was signing up for a class and a huge rainbow popped out of the sky. And I was like, oh, that's a sign. And so I Googled it and I said, Goddess of Rainbow. And there was Iris. But I never heard of her. Um, there's more, I think, out there now, but I think the trick with, researching as much of Greek mythology now as I have, um, you kind of need to know where to look. I think that's part of it. Like she does show up in a lot of things. However, a lot of the Greek gods also have different names depending on where you're looking. Aphrodite has a billion of them. Hecate has a whole bunch. Iris will sometimes just be references like the rainbow, so you wouldn't see Iris. You would see the rainbow, or you would see, things that are translated in Greek that I'm still trying to learn. But I think that the more you look, the more you can find. However, there just isn't a lot because she wasn't one of the big Olympians. And yet I keep finding stuff. So I imagine that there's still more to be found.
Well, and you're getting better with the keywords to put
Oh
in
yeah.
there, right?
I have
Because
more of the
you
landscape
have
now. Yeah.
coming out in November, when you talk about all those Greek gods in your head, it's coming out in November. You have
The
what do you have?
Pantheon Greeks. So we have a Pantheon series at Moon Books, and I wrote about the Greeks. So that is a bigger book about, I imagine, not everything in the Greek mythology, but a lot of things, a lot, and focuses on the primordial gods, which are the gods before, like at the beginning, and then into the Titans, and then into the Olympians. And so also how that all came about, basics of Greek magic and ritual, and about the cosmology and cosmogony, I think are the two. There's a whole bunch. It gives context. It also talks a lot about, because this is really near and dear to my heart, how do we reconcile all of the sexual assault in Greek mythology? How do we navigate that? And I talked about that too.
Well, and so people of many faiths should read your book because many faiths' main book story has a lot of
Mhm.
sexual abuse and things
Yes.
in
And
it.
I think, and what I found was interesting and not quite, I imagine, what most people will expect me to say, because context is everything. And if you look at
It
it
is
through a modern
everything.
lens, it looks absolutely horrible, and it is. However, that's not necessarily the way they saw it.
Yeah, no, context is everything, and the time is everything, and it's not
Yeah.
about forgetting these things because it helps us understand the people of the time and how things improved.
Yes. And
I mean,
also, like, I mean, there are certain gods, though, that after reading as much as I've read now, I do not like. I just can't get past some of the things, but it is helpful in understanding their place in some of the myths. But I will say to all people, I don't like Poseidon.
I think that's a sign of
I do not.
you don't
I,
like
ugh. And then I saw them in Chaos, the Netflix series. I think that was well done. So, mhm.
Okay, now I'm going to have to now I started
Oh,
watching that,
so
but
good.
then I mean, aside from being Greek mythology, I will watch anything with Jeff Bloom in it. It's just
I,
now our
I
king of off topic.
his Zeus is amazing, and I cannot see it any other way now. Perfect. I
Okay,
agree
Jeff.
wholeheartedly. All right.
That is.
Hinting of
Okay, so
Cronus being
Robin,
oh, Cronus.
a little offer.
Well, it wasn't Cronus. Like I don't think it was. But right now I'm trying to think of because now I have every myth in my head. And so I think we're going to take a hold on that because my brain can't access that at the minute. But
Yes, yes,
there's
yes.
a lot of stories of like the Greeks eating their children because of a prophecy. And the one that
Like
I'm thinking of
real,
is
like not
y-
Olympians, like
well, so I think that the one that I think it's Uranus, I think, isn't it? That does that because Cronus is the one that kills Uranus and then Aphrodite pops out. Um, Maybe it is. I sometimes get Uranus and Cronus mixed up. But the fact of the matter is, they do eat them because they're like, oh, the prophecy is like, well, your first male child one of your children is going to take over the thing. And so they do that because they think eating them is the way to go. And then, the wife finds out and sort of says, nope, don't eat Zeus. This is the story that I'm thinking of, is that they hide Zeus for a while and Zeus comes back and rescues all of his siblings. And Hestia becomes like a firstborn and a lastborn, to bring it back to Hestia. But
so if you
uh,
don't want your
mhm.
kids to take over your position, you eat them. That
Well, don't seek out prophecies.
yes.
There's a lot. I
And
mean,
then but I mean, that was the thing of the time, like in British royalty and
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
everybody, France, someone would get a position
yeah.
and there would be, someone else coming up to take that position, whether
Hmm.
it was the king's real
Hmm.
son
Yeah.
or whatever. And they would just didn't matter if they were little kids, babies or whatever, they would just get rid of them because
It's in a lot of mythologies. It's a lot of mythologies in order to like, but I think mostly it's the symbolism of like, taking in what is horrible and then something happens that actually works better. You just don't know it at that point. You end up the prophecy still happens
yeah,
no matter what.
prophecies are tricky things.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other
I mean, as like many people in the other world
mhm.
like to be tricksters and
Yes, and the Greeks like to be dramatic. And to be clear, one of the things that I've noticed in all my research is that, nobody wants to give up power and they'll do whatever it takes. And that's across the gods.
except for Hestia.
Except for Hestia. Hestia's like, ooh, I don't know about this. And I think that's so true. I think that she's one of the few goddesses that I've seen written about that you're like, there isn't like this underhanded sort of diminishment of them. Like Hestia is just Hestia. Like you'll see like things, Athena will say things that are kind of crappy, and there's mocking of Aphrodite, and like Hestia doesn't really get that from
Well,
what I
wasn't
saw.
there that whole I'm more beautiful, who's the most beautiful
That
daughter
was
thing
yeah,
happening
that was
with the
Paris. Yeah, that's what launched Troy. Well, the idea that like, Eros comes into the marriage of Paris and sort of says like, one of Aphrodite, Artemis, Athena, one of you I will name the most beautiful. If you give something to Paris, and Paris chooses you, and they all do their best. And they all, like most of them, offer power and prestige. And Aphrodite's like, I'll give you Helen. And Paris is like, you win. You're the most
offering
beautiful. Mhm.
offering love.
Yeah, that'll get it. She knew.
So, um, which makes you think it must be hard to script Helen because she has to be the most beautiful in any of those movies.
I think it's hard, like, just to break down any of like the female goddesses or female represented goddesses in Greek mythology is hard because they're written through mostly men's eyes. And so I don't always trust how they're described. I think that somebody's aggressiveness, like Hera and all of the exploits of Zeus, I think is really warranted. And he sometimes like comes across as like the jerky wife who just isn't very understanding. I don't know.
Well,
Chaos series, how they held Hera in that
such is
felt
the
very good.
narrative of society, though.
Yes.
And maybe Zeus wouldn't run around with all of these women if she was kinder to him, or she didn't put, meanwhile, she's lived how many years and given him how many children and put up with this.
And also, why are we focusing on her when it's him doing the things?
Well,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's messed up. Iris,
Mhm.
it's messed up. We can't fix all of that today.
We cannot, but it's very gratifying to watch in chaos how they've handled it up to a certain point.
I will definitely have to watch it then. I
It's
will. I
very,
will. I
yeah.
will
Jeff
have to
Goldblum
give
is
it.
perfect as Zeus. Perfect. Perfect. Like
Um,
I could not think of anyone else.
I don't like Zeus.
So good. I
I
know.
liked his
I know.
portrayal in one of the recent Thors, how they portrayed them. And I remember a
Well,
commenter saying on one of the things, how could they how could they make Zeus look like that? And other people are like, have you read Greek mythology? That was all Zeus.
I'm not going to go on for much longer, but I have to get at this in. Jeff Goldblum is like the right level of like, is he making a joke or is he off his rocker right now? Like he's the right blend of like, you don't know what to expect. And that feels like Zeus to me, like that he would just kind of fly off the handle. But at the same time, then he's also kind of like not really confident in himself and always going to harem. Like, is everything okay? So good. So good.
Well, he had that weird childhood with, the eating thing and everything.
Zeus has been through some stuff, to be fair.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't give him a right to treat other people that way.
No.
Get therapy and work on it. Okay.
If only men could get therapy. Yes, that is often a phrase of mine. Yes.
Okay. So, Robin, shame on you. You took us far, far away.
But also, it's Greek mythology. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and it's fun. And we had fun. Okay, so it's getting over the fear of helping other people. And we said, the smallest thing can be a help. It says, I'm thinking about you. And perhaps that's a little lacking in today's
I think it's
society.
hard. I think it's hard because we're also, as individuals, society is not set up to resource us well. Capitalism is really designed to keep you tired and afraid so that you're so focused on your own feelings that you really can't consider others because you're really under-resourced.
And
And
if you
so,
are a giver, if you are a nurturer, your voice is taken away from you because you are meaningless in that cog. You are
often.
not paying taxes. Like the amount of volunteer people put time into volunteer and they're out there and they're helping people. And instead of it being, not that they're looking for that, like true volunteers are doing it because they see a need and they see to help. It's not for the, if you buy this, we'll give $10 to the children's fund. It's like, just give them $10 anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like Iris gets anything out of all of her service. She's just doing it because that's her role. That is her
needs
job.
to be done.
Yeah. And it needs to be done.
So I think that older citizens, when they're feeling left out, and feeling like they can't contribute anything, their contribution is to allow the younger people to come and help them because it continues the cycle. And so I think it does, as you said, it's not. This helping in community is not a level field at any given time. You're going from the past, you're giving it to the future. It is a time outside of
Yeah,
the world, I
it's the,
think.
I think it's the ongoing conversation too, like, you know, between service and sort of activism. This idea that we live in a society that tells us everything should happen instantaneously. You know, what we do should matter now. And it doesn't. A lot of activism that's happening right now and the changes that are happening that maybe we can't see because they're teeny tiny aren't going to happen for generations. And that's frustrating. So it makes you feel powerless. It makes you kind of go like, well, it doesn't really matter. It does. You just don't see it yet. And that doesn't mean if you can't see it that you shouldn't still try to do something. I mean, I think that that's part of Iris. I mean, what does she, like, she does the things. It's not like she gets, you know, a huge celebration for it. She does it because it is
No,
the
but
thing to do.
she's getting it now. I'm
Yeah, that's the hope. See, this is the thing. I'm speaking up for the folks who haven't gotten enough applause because I think they should.
They go out there every day and do their thing, regardless of how they're feeling. Those kids, which is when those kids get fed. Like there are people in the world that know that dinner has to happen.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we got on. There's this my publisher does I can't remember how often it comes out, a magazine called Moonscape. And
I
I
think
wrote
it's
an
4
article
times a
about
year.
Hestia, just came out, like this last version. And the title of the article is something to the effect of "We do owe something to each other." And I've become more and more interested in that sort of individualistic thinking that sort of says like, I just have to look out for me and like, I don't owe anything to anyone. If you want to be in community and you want the resources of the community and the support of community, you do owe something to each other. You do have to show up and give when you can, because like any relationship, it's never 50-50, like you've already mentioned, Vicky, but it's never completely balanced. But like when you are at your 80% good and someone else is at their 20%, you know, good, how can you help them? Because the time when you're not at your whatever, somebody else might be. So, but it requires this willingness to show up when it's not convenient, to show up and offer resources when you can, to reach out to people, to stay in connection with people, to solve conflicts, to meet those moments too, because that's part of community. We are not all going to agree. That's just the way it is. It is never going to happen. And that's okay. But it's how we come back together and sort of say, this relationship is important enough for me to understand your point, you understand mine, and we figure out how to repair our relationship if that feels like the thing to do.
Well, because it's going to be wasted time.
Yeah.
If you don't decide whether you're going to continue it, leave it, but just battling day after day over whose side the fence
Right.
is on is it's a waste of life. That's what I keep calling it. It's a waste of life. You have one life. Why are you
As far as we
doing
know.
it? So
Yeah.
then we're not supposed, we don't usually, I think only in the Celtic thing do we remember the past life. You know, we go, I don't know. I'm ready for this to be the last. So
I'm ready to come back as a cat with
oh, they only
with an
they
owner who is slightly neurotic and has a lot of disposable income.
but they
That's what
don't
I've
use
decided.
any of the stuff. They
Yeah.
just, you know, mine chases the sun. Like you can tell where she is by which side of the house the sun is on, which, and she will, if you're still in bed when that sun is coming through that window, you're gone because it's hers now. I'm sorry, there's a schedule in this house.
I love it. I love it.
So cats,
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I have a
yeah.
friend who our way of staying in contact with each other, because we don't live right next to each other, is we send each other our cat pictures all the time and say, I want to be doing this right now. So, you know, that's also
But
helpful.
that is connecting without, I mean, with the distance between us, we feel like we need to write something and then we feel like we have to write this whole thing. And then that gets into, you know, in that whole thing, you're bound to say something wrong. So if you just say, look at my cat.
Look at my cat, or here is a purple heart emoticon, whatever. You know, here are things like, I'm thinking of you, you exist as someone who's important in my life, you crossed my mind, and I want to reach out. And then they do the same.
No, exactly. And then it just becomes, I don't want to say child, it becomes innocent. There
Mm,
isn't a level of, worry about I say the wrong thing or what are they expecting from me or, in return, it's just when I feel like it and
mm.
it comes to me, I think of you and I send that.
Yeah. We
I
don't
don't
need to
I
get
don't see
tangled
them
in the
enough.
feelings about feelings thing. We don't need to get tangled in that.
No, no,
You
no,
know,
no, no,
we could
because then
just
there's no sleep.
offer something. It's all good.
Okay, so now we're just gonna skip everything and go to
Great.
what we were talking about in the beginning
Yeah,
before the
yeah, it's
camera.
all good. It's the Greeks. This
I
is what
think we've been
happens.
kind of talking about we wanted to, and
Mhm.
no, from that beginning, I don't think we've been following anything. And that's okay because that's what Fika is all about. It's what we feel like talking about in that moment. And I'm just
That's why I love
looking
this.
for
I
that
love it.
question
Mhm.
for how did I word about okay, that was under okay. Two words I think that get confused are hope, which some consider
Mhm.
expectations, and giving,
Mhm.
which some consider charity or being taken.
Mhm.
How would
Mhm.
you define these two things in the context of your work?
Yeah, I will say first that I am an aggressively hopeful person. So that needs to be said. I hope is for me the act of believing that something else is going to happen, which is not about necessarily good things. It's about the recognition that something else will be after this moment. And that requires surrender. It requires the willingness to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to show up for it anyway. I am going to show up for what is necessary, what is needed, and I can believe beyond despair. Because despair for me is sort of the opposite of hope. And despair is everything's going to suck and nothing's going to get better. And that to me sounds like there's nothing I can do, so I'm not going to do anything. Hope is possibility, it is potential. It is, if I just keep going, something's going to happen. And I love that. And I'm a Sagittarius, so of course I do. But it
I
is,
can see that.
I do believe that that is what will get us through a lot of things, is to be willing at least to hope and to know that there is potential in everything. Like just because everything is whatever it is right now, however you want to define it, does not mean it's going to stay that way. We actually don't know that. It could, but it also might not.
Very seldom does. I mean, change is inevitable, right?
Thank goodness.
And here to your definition. I agree completely. Where there is possibility, there is a place for action, and when you take action, something's
Mhm.
going to happen. It's
But
it's it's that pull.
and hope is scary though. Like here's the thing. Like hope is freaky because we don't know. If you're in despair, it's less freaky because you think you know. And so hope is it's
Yeah, you're
scary.
gonna worry either way, no
Yeah, I
matter
mean,
whether
why not
you're
hope?
hoping or you're despairing, because there are things happening that you don't know about. So you might as well worry on the hopeful side
Mhm.
because I don't know.
Mm.
I continually ask myself this.
Mhm.
Was I born like
Mm.
why I can't
Mhm.
totally lose hope in anything because there's always something that could happen. So I've never there have been times
Mhm.
and then the hope is get out of your cave, Vicky, and move it. You're old enough to know this is not the answer. So I might bring myself to that cave, close the door, and then say, "Oh my goodness, I can't do this,"
Yeah.
and go back to hope. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's silliness as some people might portray that kind of thing. It takes courage.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that when you added in the idea of giving, I think that sometimes people hear giving as sacrifice. And I think that that is a word that sometimes is held with like a little bit of contempt in society. This idea that, oh, sacrifice, we can't sacrifice because there's scarcity. And if I sacrifice, that means I'm not going to have everything that I need. Sacrifice at its core means to make holy. We all sacrifice every single day.
We
We
sacrifice
sacrifice
every
our
time we make a
time.
decision. We sacrifice that road that we could have taken when where it would have
Yes.
led to.
And it is and it is giving of something of yourself. And I think that that is important to hold as something that's actually really holy. And when we can be more, engaged in that and more specific about how we give, I think not only does that actually help moving forward, it also sustains us and it keeps us from burnout. And it keeps things moving. Because when you are doing something, I believe someone else sees it, you're at least giving that little spark, maybe that little flame of an idea to maybe they could try that too.
Yeah, because there's happiness in doing things. There's happiness in doing.
Like, even if happiness seems real far away sometimes, I think that there is a satisfaction knowing that you've showed up as best you could, but you did show up. You might have learned something from it and go, ooh, maybe not that way the next time. But we don't learn anything unless we go and do it. And we find out that, yay, that was great, or ooh, I could have done that differently. And that's okay, because that's the way we learn. And the quicker we try things and find out that they're not right, the quicker we can change tactics. And,
Well,
if you don't do anything, ooh, it's just hard to, know. It can be easy to get stuck. It can be easy to go like,
yes,
well, this is safe because I know what to expect.
yes, yes, and it may be, but I don't know. You're sacrificing yourself then, I think.
I think that there's, in